is up, and it's good.
You're listening to The Extra Point, hosted by Phil Ruskin.
Welcome in. I'm not sure if we've got this rocking and rolling because I just had a nice little internet pause. So hopefully we're doing a show right now.
I think we're good.
It is The Extra Point. Welcome to an episode. All the boys are here. We got Evan, we got Kendall, we got Mike. This is mostly a Dynasty show. Obviously, we do content in all of the different spaces because it is Dynasty season. That's what we've been focusing on, but it is the summer of Bestball, and it's so much of a summer that Evan wore his tank top to the show today. So we are ready to rock and roll. We got Dynasty content for you on the YouTube channel, so make sure you jump over to The Extra Point. And of course, all of us are here, part of the Fantasy Football Network, so jump on there if you want to see our Dynasty content. But tonight, we are going to focus on some Bestball. I want to talk through couple different things tonight with everybody here. We're going to talk through our ideal builds. We're going to start there. From there, I think we're each going to give one of our best value stacks. We'll give you all some ideas about some of the cheapest stacks that you absolutely can and should be affording in your best ball drafts. And then, of course, we'll give you some of those sneaky stacks at the end. We might mix in some contrarian plays, tell you who we don't like, who you maybe should avoid. So really excited for this show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Kendall, why don't you kick us off with your ideal build if you were in obviously a 12-team league? This is a one quarterback format. Almost all of the ADP that we're going to pull tonight is directly from Underdog. We will give some DraftKings ADP as well. I know they've got some great contests over there. So for those that like to play best ball, but most of the time you are playing in a single quarterback format. With two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, and a double flex situation. So we're going to talk about that kind of a build with a roster size between 18 on Underdog and 20. So just keep that in mind. If we give an ADP or if we give some players, you might have two extra rounds if you're on DraftKings versus Underdog. But Kendall, why don't you start us off with how you like to build your teams and what you're ideally shooting for when you leave the draft? In terms of the relationship with your quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, and tight ends.
In 2026, for best ball this year, here is how I want my ideal construction to look like. So at the top, I want a robust RB, or basically I'm going 2 through 3, or hero RB. So I'm almost going superhero RB, where I want 2 through 3 and 3 through 5. That's absolutely how I'm spending the first couple of rounds. At quarterback, I want QBs with a wide receiver 2 that I like. So that from the stacking perspective, I want to be able to miss on someone reaching for my wide receiver 1. And instead of missing the stack, I have pieces that I can fall back on and feel just as good. I'm very, very pro a lot of wide receiver 2s right now. We'll get into them on another show another day, but just know I'm very above market on a lot of them. And so I want to correlate my build for that take to pay off. And then generally, if I can, more on DraftKings than on Underdog because of the tight end or the touchdown scoring being a little elevated with the half PPR versus DraftKings PPR, where you don't need the touchdowns quite as much. I want to be able to get Bowers, McBride, Loveland, Warren in, if and when I can, as just a way to fit the build, where if I like a lot of wide receiver 2s and I also like a lot of wide receiver 3s, I'm okay having less wide receivers in the early rounds and taking one of those rounds to go premium tight end, because I will be able to make up the value with how many players I have above market at the wide receiver position. So in summary, superhero but fragile RB, because I like the late round targets less and less. I'm okay taking... Some years I'm very bullish on late tight end. I'm going to probably take one of the earlier ones, leaning towards somebody I can get in the 3rd or 4th. So the Loveland Warren is pretty good there. And then I'm going to be taking a lot of later wide receivers, as opposed to in previous years where I would have gone running back a little heavier in the later rounds. That's how I'm playing my builds for the most part.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note it is June 10th. Meaning, and why do I say that? Why is that important? Because the prices you're getting right now are going to change. The ADPs are going to change. There's going to be risers. There's going to be injuries in camp. And so, we don't speak injuries into existence, but there are backup running backs. There are third string running backs that you are getting incredibly cheap right now in the 13th to 18th rounds, who, if a situation arose where they were suddenly an RB2 or an RB1 on their own roster, could go 6-7 rounds higher. So I think for me, it's important to understand, number one, I love doing best ball this time of year because it obviously gives all of us the fix of drafting without having, the redraft season. And obviously our rookie drafts are certainly done. Almost all of them are done anyway for Dynasty. But you're also getting the best prices on what we anticipate the premium players are going to be before the real camp hits. And I like that because I do feel there are certain players that, even though they are discounted today, I'm getting a kind of an extra discount if their ADP were to rise. So, Evan, why don't you give us your ideal build? I know Kendall is going in kind of that hero/superhero RB role. When you enter a draft, and then obviously when you leave a draft, what makes you feel like you have a good shot at winning your league or advancing if you're playing in these large field tournaments?
So when I'm doing best ball builds, I don't typically just have one best ball team for the whole year. So therefore, I don't like to stay married to one particular method to try and do as well as I can in best ball, where I don't think there's one proper way to build a best ball team. These days in fantasy football across the board, running backs, quality running backs, I should say, like what Kendall was talking about with the superhero running back, you definitely want to start off somewhere in the first few rounds with a running back that you know is going to be treated like a bell cow on the level of like a Christian McCaffrey, a Derrick Henry, a Jonathan Taylor. You want to grab one of those guys that you know are going to get a lot of good work, that are going to be dependable on a week-to-week basis, even if there's one or two off weeks where they go like 16 for 20 some yards. So what? There'll be other weeks. Maybe you'll have running backs on your bench that'll step up in case one of those studs happens to have 1 out of 16 or 17 games in which they go dud. That's okay. Wide receiver, I definitely agree with on Kendall, in which I think you can definitely wait on the quality wide receivers in later rounds, but I also want to grab a hero wide receiver as well on the level of like an AJ Brown now that he's traded to the New England Patriots. Want to grab a CeeDee Lamb, want to grab a Justin Jefferson, as much as that's going to scare people, but Justin Jefferson is going to see that volume that you still want to treat like a high-end wide receiver one. So that's where I'm going in the first place, assuming that this is I think most best ball tournaments are one quarterback leagues anyway, so you can definitely wait on quarterback at this time. You don't have to reach on them the way that I'll definitely get to this later in the episode, but you don't have to reach on quarterback in stuff like DraftKings best ball leagues, where you see people like Josh Allen going at the 15-4, which is plain stupid. Don't treat rushing quarterbacks like running backs either. Get yourself a running back that's dedicated to the position.
Yep, I think there's a lot of variance when it comes to ADP. Underdog will run some of these, the puppy tournaments, and then they'll have, the puppy but super flex or whatever the name of the dog is, but super flex with the caveat there. And there's different strategies for that. I think we'll probably get into that a little bit later in the summer because there is some nuance, and I do think that is. I've thrown a couple entries into those types of leagues before, and I think your strategy is very different. I'll be honest, in those kind of super flex formats, I'm actually drafting quarterbacks in the first 2, if not the first 3 rounds, just knocking them out because the falling value is there for the receivers because everybody is so quarterback hungry. So we'll talk more about that, but again, we'll focus mostly on one quarterback leagues tonight. Mike, are you your ideal build? Are you looking at similar to what Evan and Kendall are looking at, or are you looking at an ideal build maybe through a different lens?
I mean, I pretty much love the way that they both describe the types of builds that they like. I pretty much like to mix it up based on where I am in the draft order. If I'm a little bit later in a draft, I'll maybe go wide receiver. If I'm a little bit early, I'll try to go running back. It's really more based on where you fall in the randomization. But at the end of the day, I like to at least have two I want to have 2 stacks at the end of the day. I want to have one high end tier, and I want to have kind of like what Kendall was saying with the low end tier with that, QB wide receiver 2 type situation, any way that I can. But I also like to keep in mind with the buys, I think a lot of people always forget about it. Sometimes they overdo it where they'll take, 5 guys in week 8 and say, oh, I'm just going to lose week 8. No. Like I like to make it where my team has the best chance to win every single week so that I have a better chance at the end of the year to have more points and be able to win, whatever tournament or thing that I'm currently in. So just keeping in mind of guys like you don't want to have your Jamar Chase playing in week 6. Sorry, let me rephrase that. If you have Jamar Chase playing in week 6 and you have Isaiah Pacheco playing in week 6, okay, whatever, that's fine. Keep that going. Don't worry about it. But I would maybe avoid guys like, having Amon-Ra St. Brown and T. Higgins as your 2 guys. You don't want those 2 guys out at the same week. You're going to just have a horrible week. But otherwise, I pretty much stick to that particular method. I try to grab value where I can, but I don't try to force things. I really just try to make it come, have the draft come to me the best way I can.
I like the way you finished that take, right? I let the draft come to me the way that it can, because I think that's really important, right? I think there's too many players that are fixated on, well, I started with Justin Jefferson, but then I have to take Kyler Murray. You don't.
No.
You don't have to take Kyler Murray. If he's there for you in the 12th round, great, take him. Of course, it's a discount and it's fine. But Justin Jefferson is one of those players, and I'm going to talk about it here in a second. You can play certain guys what we call naked, meaning they're not attached to their pass. They're the quarterback, right? There's not a stack, and that is okay. So my ideal build is I want 3 stacks. And the other reason I brought up a couple minutes ago why I like to do drafts this time of the summer, you can get 3 stacks right now. Yeah. Whereas later in the summer, the prices are going to get so expensive, you can't. You will be looking at kind of Mike's preferred build of maybe I'm going super high end, quarterback receiver. The Bears are a great example. It is difficult to stack with the Bears right now because their ADPs are all so high. Rome and Burden are very close to one another. And then the next round is Caleb, which is fine, but you are committing to taking those guys. Whereas I'm looking to get 3 stacks, and I'm really looking at a quarterback with their wide receiver or their tight end. Sure, if you have a McCaffrey, you have a Gibbs, you have a pass catcher like that, that's fine. But I'm really trying to find quarterbacks with their tight ends and the receivers. And then I'm also looking for the highest ceiling, like I said, naked players. Who's somebody that I know I can take early, that if I miss out on their quarterback, or I just don't want their quarterback or don't need their quarterback, the volume is still going to be there for me in the end. So I'm looking at 3 stacks with the quarterback, the receiver, and hopefully the tight end. And if I can leave with 3 potent offenses, then I feel really good about my chances to succeed. I know, Mike, to your point, the bye weeks, sure, if you've got 3 different teams, you're gonna miss out on some of that. But the opposite end of that is if I get my 3 stacks that don't have the same bye weeks, I'm hoping that my guys are catching touchdowns when the other guys are on a bye. So let's talk about some guys that we think are some of the best values in the draft. I think everybody knows really good players when it comes to a redraft. And again, Dynasty is mostly what we do on this show. And you do have to kind of take out, I love Kendall. I know you and I love Eli Stowers. But Eli Stowers, this particular season in Bestball, now he is free right now, so I would draft him right now. But later in the summer, his ADP is going to rise. He may not be a great pick in Bestball, right? And there's other players. There's countless examples of that. So let's take a look at some of the best value stacks of players that we have seen produce that we know are going to be starters. And Kendall, we'll start with you. Give us one of the best value stacks that you think is something that players could actually go out and target and draft when they're in their leagues. Sure.
So mine is I'm going to go with the 49er stack here. Okay. So the stacks that I'm looking for here are Purdy, undercosted in an elite offensive coaching scheme, with not the defense they've had previously, and should probably need to put up more points than they have in the past. And I just consistently see them as a team that does put up points. Purdy has excellent and elite footwork in the pocket, so the ability to maybe have a few more rushing touchdowns than you might otherwise see. I just see him as a high floor with some high ceiling plays. But the idea is you can have a true alpha wide receiver 1 in the stack with Evans, but because he's old, new team, this isn't the trade that like, oh man, Evans is going to ball, because Purdy's a little undervalued and the 49ers as a team aren't looked at like they once were in some lens, but specifically on Underdog, where you have the half PPR where it's really a touchdown game when you want to win these tournaments. Evans with a guy like Purdy, who one is a good deep ball thrower. Ayuk had his absolute best days when Purdy was consistently throwing the ball 20 yards down the field. At a young age too. Purdy was slinging it the way we saw Jackson Dart do right out the gate. Just really not afraid to rip it. And he's not afraid to throw back-to-back interceptions, which isn't great, but you need that sort of gunslinger Brett Favre mentality when you're going to have a true elite season from a guy like Evans. And if Christian McCaffrey is in a situation where he's a little more inefficient and isn't capping off every play, I think Evans can have a 15 touchdown season. So I like that Evans is undercosted for a true wide receiver 1, and Purdy could have a similar season to what we saw from Trevor last year, where the touchdown regression comes positive and he hits his best football when they need to make a playoff push. The nice thing is I want a stack that's correlated with a wide receiver 2 that I like. You get your alpha wide receiver 1 in Evans, but if you happen to miss, that's fine. I think Ricky Pearsall is a fantastic talent, runs deep routes, and Evans has a history of missing time. So you have a very, very high upside of Kittle is banged up. Pearsall is going to be forced to do a lot. Juwan Jennings is no longer with the team. You have a situation where Pearsall can just get it done a lot with Evans on the field, and he has an explosion without. And every single one of these players is a little undercosted where I have them projected. I think it is the definition of a value stack.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm not saying that as a Niners fan. I'm saying that as
doesn't hurt though.
It doesn't hurt. No. And I promise I didn't tell Kendall to do that, but I will say this, like it's exactly what a value stack is, because it's not somebody that I think people want the Josh Allens, right? They want the Lamar Jacksons early. They want to try to see if they can take a shot if they're at the 101 to 104, on getting Jamar Chase and bringing back with Joe Burrow. So I think it's a great value. The other thing I will say, again, we talk a lot about Dynasty on this show, but this is why Best Ball's so fun, because Mike Evans is basically left for dead in Dynasty, and Ricky's value in Dynasty is awful right now. But in a Best Ball format, they have immense value because it's touchdowns, and you don't have to, it's not a managed league. You don't have to decide which week you want to start them. So love the value there, Kendall. I think the Niners are a great offense. We all know they can score. So yeah, great value. Evan, I think you and I were talking backstage before the show just to kind of talk about maybe some players that you might be avoiding, maybe some guys that you don't think have as high a ceiling, or maybe because Kendall just mentioned it, a lot of this has to do with touchdowns. Maybe there's some touchdown regression coming up. While we're talking about best value stacks, give us a little contrarian take on maybe who are some guys that you are okay passing on, or you're actively trying not to draft as kind of the anti-value.
I think we should get to the Mike stacks first and your stacks first, just because I think it would make a little more sense. But
fair enough. Mike, you are on the clock. Evan just passed.
That's fine. I was right in the middle of actually changing mine. I had the Nico Collins Stroud one, but I think I might be changing it because after I took a couple extra minutes to look, I'm liking the Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, and Matthew Stafford stack as some of the best value that is out there. The more I keep looking at it, you keep seeing these guys in the top 5 of every one of these, or top 10 of every single, project or things that they finished last year. Puka Nacua finished first, in so many different categories in yardage, or second in yardage. He was, third in targets, and on top of that, Devontae Adams finishing 14 touchdowns, which was the highest in the league. And at this point, Stafford as well being at the 46 touchdowns as well. That's a huge advantage when it comes to best ball, and especially for underdog with, like Kendall said, with the, half point. I'm loving that particular value because you're getting Devontae Adams in the, he's averaging at the 5.3, Puka Nacua at the 1.4, and Stafford at the 9.6. That's just great value to have later on. And these guys are so, spread out that you're able to get really great value.
It's Kendall and I have talked about this for years on the Dynasty portion of this show, which is why do we continue to have a Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, not this season, but historically a Puka Nacua in the first round and Adams in the third. Adams will probably be more like fifth or sixth round this year in redraft. But why do we have those guys so high and then you're getting Stafford in the 10th?
Yeah,
right. Like the correlation doesn't,
no sense.
it doesn't make sense. Right. And so in this format where you don't have to choose a starter each week, I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of the best value stacks that there is. I'm going to go very similar to yours in terms of ceiling outcome. It's the Cowboys, right? And you look at the Cowboys and you say, okay, their defense did get better, but this is still a really potent offense. This is a high scoring offense. CeeDee Lamb gives you the opportunity to have. Can he be the overall wide receiver one? Yes. Is he going to be? Probably not, but that's okay. I'm looking at his floor, probably as wide receiver 5 or 6. So if I can start with CeeDee Lamb in the first, then I can load up on receivers and and running backs, because I can take my quarterback Dak at the 707. And if I need to reach at the early 7th round, that's totally fine. And Dak is going to do what Dak always does, similar to what Jared Goff does. He's going to finish inside the top 10. He's probably going to finish inside the top 8, and he's certainly going to be a guy that can win you weeks. So I think you've got an opportunity to get a cheap quarterback 1 in the 7th round. And then I love the bring back of Ferg in the 11th round, especially to Kendall's point earlier. If I now don't have to target someone expensive, I could go get a Tyler Warren in the 4th. I could go get a Brock Bowers in the 2nd, a Trey McBride in the 3rd, if I want that hero tight end, and still get somebody that I feel very comfortable with in a stack with some extra value, who is also my tight end 2, or hopefully my tight end 3, most likely my tight end 2 on my roster. The other reason I really like the Cowboys is if for any reason you miss out on CD, or you really want to start with a running back, you have the chance to pivot and still grab Pickens in the 2nd round at some point. And so that's the beginnings of my triple stack, is if I can go and grab CD, who's an alpha, grab some other players who I can stack with later on, then grab Dak, I feel really great about leaving with two of the 3, if not 3 of the 4 Cowboys on my team, knowing that I've got some super high-end upside there. So, Evan, it is your turn now. You cannot pass this time. Let's talk about some guys that you think might have some regression, or you're just not going to be a great best ball player this season.
So based on DraftKings ADP as of right now, June 10th, 2026, while we're recording this episode, I do have a top 10 player list of guys that I am avoiding at their current ADP. But while I'm thinking about it, I can at least tell you one team stack that I will be avoiding before I get into this list, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I've got 2 Buccaneers wide receivers on this list, and I am not a fan of their offense this year, despite looking pretty good on paper. You guys talked about all the stacks that you definitely do want, whether that's the Dallas Cowboys, whether that's the San Francisco 49ers, excellent stacks, but I am a lot lower on ADP than Chase Brown at 21.9 and Emeka Egbuka at 36.7. Chase Brown is a guy that I still do not trust. He has his RB1 upside weeks, but we all saw how badly he struggled at the beginning of last season when that offensive line was failing to get anything going. Even with Joe Burrow out there, he was struggling to get anything going, averaging way less than 4 yards per carry until they started to pick things up after the bye week. And then maybe he was a league winner in your best ball league, but he wasn't a league winner in a lot of other people's leagues. And Emeka Egbuka at 36.7, I don't want to take a inconsistent wide receiver with a 49% catch rate as low as his. Maybe it can be fixed, but when Zach Robinson is your offensive coordinator, who was underwhelming with the Atlanta Falcons and is taking over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, I'm out on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I do not want to build any Baker stacks with Emeka Egbuka or even Chris Godwin, who I have at 94.8, who I definitely don't want to have stacked with Baker Mayfield, because Godwin has no guaranteed history of staying healthy. So if you were expecting Chris Godwin to be valuable this year, I don't want to bank on any upside weeks from the Buccaneers offense this year. I think it's going to struggle, and I would be very surprised if the Buccaneers even finish in like the top of the NFC South this year. I think they could easily fall to third place or even last place if things go really, really badly. But I have no faith in the Buccaneers this year. Before I get to the rest of the list, though, I'll let you guys comment on what you guys think so far.
I just did find it interesting that when I was reviewing the show sheet, and I've got all these different categories: cheapest stacks, sneaky stacks, value stacks. Nobody had any bucks in any of the categories. So I was curious when that was going to come up or if it would come up. We did have some overlap. We'll get to some of that later. We all had a couple of different takes on certain guys and certain stacks that we liked. We all had a lot of individual takes and things that's like, oh, I didn't think about that. When I was looking through some of your guys' stuff, I imagine you thought the same when you saw some of mine. And then I saw some similarities of like, there's no bucks on here at all. It's easy to fade. It's easy to fade the Jets, right? Like that one's a kind of a no-brainer. Nobody's really doing much there. It's easy to fade the Cardinals. Nobody's doing much there, right? The Dolphins, maybe they're super sneaky, but it's like you throw them on super late because they're super cheap. But when you think of mid-round players that are going to wind up on your redraft rosters, mid-round players that are on your dynasty rosters, I found it ironic that nobody had any Buccaneers for the best ball format.
I put Baker on at the very end. I was like looking through my thing and I'm like, Baker, Baker with Mbuka. I mean, 10th round, you're getting Baker now, and you can grab Mbuka in the 4th. I mean, it's not a horrible stack to have, but
4th is pricey, dude. 4th is so pricey if we're not guaranteed.
It's pricey.
Though.
It's pricey.
Everyone else I can get is like, I'm not even remotely worried. And the fact that I have to be worried in the 4th round, you can get Tyler Warren in the 4th round and be like, nope, I'm just very set.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I like McMillan. There's only one player
I was going to say
that I like.
He was the other one.
He fits I don't want to stack him with Baker. Completely agree with Evan. He fits the profile of, I don't need the whole offense to do good. I just think he's individually talented and a guy that will get less coverage, but might be just as talented as Egbuka because he came back from a damn near broken neck and caught a couple touchdowns. I've never seen that before. There's some dog in that guy. So I'll fire up a couple of solo McMillan shares.
Tyler Warren, by the way, Tyler Warren right now is going at the 605. He is going to be one of the biggest.
Take him at the end of the 4th.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the biggest risers in best ball. This is why you do best ball drafts right now. And I will also share this really quickly. Tyler Warren is my number 2 overall rostered player in as far as number of shares that I have an underdog right now. Because again, I would rather take him as my hero and go get a Jake Ferguson like I was just talking about, right? Get some of these other guys that you can get super late and stack with, and not have to worry that you're going to have to. I hope Kyle Pitts does it again. Oh, I hope that Oronde Gadsden get, you know what I mean? Like it's just I'd rather be set at the tight end position and just move on. This is where you're going to see a lot of variance in Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland's ADP. It is going to rise. It is going to rise a lot. So let me finish off my. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me finish off my list here before we move on here. So DraftKings, I also am avoiding Cam Skadaboo at the 45.8. I have no faith in the Giants' run game this year. I think it's going to be heavily underwhelming with Matt Nagy running that offense. I think Cam Skadaboo and Tyrone Tracy are in for a lot of running back draws up the middle that are going to go for very little yardage. I want nothing to do with that run game, and I am definitely would prefer to grab other running backs behind him, which is Quinshawn Judkins at the 50.8 and even David Montgomery at the 53.4. So give me those guys over Skadaboo all day long. Josh Jacobs.
Mike, this is what it feels like to be a Bears fan the last
couple of years.
Me and Evan have listened to this and agree with it for years. You got to take a little bit of it, okay?
A Bears fan who is disgruntled by Matt Nagy. Shocker.
I didn't want him.
Still, does that do it for you, Evan? Like, oh no, I never. Like, I wouldn't let him coach my kid's soccer team. Okay, no, never again. No.
And I was upset when I saw Greg Roman as one of the possible candidates for OC, and then we grabbed Matt Nagy. I'm like, I'll take Greg Roman. Like, come on, like, I was very disappointed in the OC. But what I'm hoping and what I keep hearing from a lot of the beat writers for New York and a lot of the what they're looking to do, and even John Harbaugh himself. They're looking to push the ball downfield and run the damn ball. They were going to play their normal, he's going to play his old school football of run the ball, play defense. And I agree with you, Evan, in the context of I don't want to grab Scatterboo ahead of guys like Junkins or Montgomery. I'd rather have those guys, to be quite honest. But if I can get in any way, shape, or form a Scatterboo and Junkins at a reasonable price, I'm taking it.
Absolutely. Josh Jacobs at the 48.9 for obvious reasons. This could be a potential career ender for him on the level of Ray Rice. I think 48.9 is only beginning to plummet as well. We're not even seeing the final form of how low his ADP is going to go. I do not want to grab Josh Jacobs at a discount this year because I think the likelihood of him playing in this season is awfully low. Granted, there's still a lot we don't know right now, but even then, if you're building a best ball lineup over the summer, no thank you. I'm out on Josh Jacobs at this point. Parker goddamn Washington is going at the 72.1 because he does what he does every single season he's been on the Jaguars. He finishes the last 2 or 3 weeks strong because of injuries. Everybody falls for it every year. They overdraft Parker Washington, and then he sucks ass for the first 14 weeks of the season because people forget he's behind BTJ. He's behind even Travis Hunter, however many catches he's going to get, and he's behind Jacoby Myers and Brenton Strange. Parker Washington is not the priority in the Jacksonville Jaguar offense, even with Liam Cohen in charge. Do not overdraft Parker Washington as high as he's going. Avoid him like the plague. Don't bank on him even safely getting high volume in weeks 13 through 17 because it might not even happen if everybody stays healthy. So I'm out on Parker Washington at the 72.1. I'm even out on Alec.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm even out on Alec Pierce at 79.5. But before I go into that, Phil, what names do you want to give me?
Well, I was going to say, let me give you some names behind Parker that are being drafted behind Parker Washington right now. And stop me when you hear one that you would rather have Parker Washington. Ready? Mekhi Lemon, Alec Pierce, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Tucker Kraft, Jordan Addison, Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes. Do I need to keep going? I think we've made our point. These are names that are seriously going behind him, right? So this is my point, right? Tucker Kraft is, as of today, he's saying that he's going to be ready for week 1. We'll see what that really means. But Justin Herbert, if I don't have a quarterback and I'm in the 7th round, right now,
one of my
the ADP on Parker Washington is the 610. So if you're telling me that I could go get Omarion Hampton in the 2nd, and I could get Ladd McConkey in the 4th, and I could get Justin Herbert in the 7th, and there's my stack, and I've still got my first-round pick, which was Jordan Addison. Oh, excuse me, Jordan Addison. I'm looking right at Jordan Addison's name. Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb or, whatever you've got going on there, right? Amon-Ra. That's a no-brainer for me. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I know Mahomes is going to start slow, but it's best ball. You're going to have 2 or 3 quarterbacks. You don't need Mahomes to be ready in week 1. If I can get Mahomes, I don't love Mahomes this year because I don't like his stacking options. I just don't think the offense is going to be great. So I do like KW3 as one of those highest value ceiling naked players that I don't need stacked with someone that I'm totally comfortable. Totally comfortable taking. I will say this because you brought him up earlier, Evan. Kinshawn Judkins is my number 1 overall rostered player right now.
Oh,
you hear that, Mike? Judkins.
He's my
and I've been working on that.
Here's why. Because this is what I was talking about earlier with my triple stacks, right? If I can go get in the first round, let's say, and I do have a lot of this build. I've got a ton of build with the Cowboys in it, right? And if I can go and load up on 2 extra wide receivers, I just talked about targeting the Chargers in these mid rounds, which you can still do right now, which you will not be able to do, I would say, as early as next month in July, when camp really starts to heat up. If I can go get the extra wide receiver, or I could pull the trigger on a Tyler Warren, a Trey McBride, a Brock Bowers, and I could get Judkins as my RB2 to go with 3 or 4 wide receivers and still get my stacks, that's why he's my number 1 guy in an offense that we don't love the quarterbacks and we don't trust. And with rookie pass catchers, Judkins should be the number 1 player you are targeting at the running back position right now at this point in the summer, because of the upside and how cheap he is. And that's not to say that it's not a dynasty take. This is not a redraft take. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with Judkins as your RB2 in a redraft league. That's fine. This is best ball, where you don't have to start them every single week. And this is an offense that I don't think is going to change over the rest of this summer, no matter who the quarterback is. We love Casey Concepcion. He's never caught a pass in the league. We're not super stoked on Denzel Boston. Never caught a pass in the league. We all hate, I do anyway, Jerry Jeudy. Go give me Kinshawn Judkins because, Kendall, to your point earlier, best ball's about touchdowns. The touchdowns are going to go through Judkins. So let's get into some of these stacks here that we think are
I did have
cheap.
the rest of my list that I could quickly get through without hijacking the show too much.
I'm going to come back to you because I want to get through
perfect.
some of these, because that way I want to get through some of these cheap stacks here, and then we will come back with some of your avoid like the plague stacks. I like the way you said that. So, Kendall, give me somebody that is cheap that you are targeting. You started with the value was the 49ers, and let's get into some cheap stacks that people can afford and should be affording.
All right, I mean, you come here for truth because I like the game more than I like my Chicago Bears. I've got ethics when it comes to this, so I'm going to give a pro Packers take here, even though it pains me a little bit. But I think the cheapest stack that is just like beyond underrated right now is the Jordan Love. Any of the wide receivers you want to put together. I particularly like Christian Watson in best ball specifically. I mean, even in my dynasty leagues, I paired Christian Watson with also buying Golden or Reed, just because between some of them, I'll know when to play one when the other's injured. I also think that to combine all the takes together, the idea is I think Jacobs has a high probability of having a tumultuous season that can go in a lot of different ways. I won't speculate, but we'll just say there's a lot of not good there. And there's also a lot of touches and age plus off the field plus distraction. There's just a lot of it, right? And if their run game suffers, right, that team they're going to have to throw the ball. They could become the Cardinals pretty quickly. When the Cardinals ran out of room with the run game, Jordan Love isn't the world's best quarterback, but he is competent. He throws a pretty good deep ball historically. The numbers support it, as well as his wide receivers only being good at one thing, which is the deep ball, and they have a propensity of it, so they can all run 9 routes, and somebody's going to make it happen. And when it doesn't, that's okay because there's another down, and I'm only playing for the upside, right? So poor run game, positive passing touchdown regression, right? Condensed target share in and among them. And because Jordan Love's coming off of a down year where he was a little bit banged up as well, his ADP is depressed. But he's also one of those quarterbacks like Purdy, like CJ Stroud, that has athleticism, similar to a Mahomes that all of a sudden became a scramble king over time. He can still move a little bit. It's nothing crazy, but he can rush in a touchdown or two and just add just enough to give you a little bit of upside. So I think that stack is particularly underrated. And the NFC North, their offenses are all getting good. They all got better. If you got to beat the Lions and the Bears and the Vikings, if they get the quarterback JJ situation in the right direction, you're going to have to score 30 plus points to win a game in the NFC North. And so I think I want offensive players in the NFC North because there's going to be a lot of shootouts, in my opinion.
I love it. I think the other thing I would say just really quickly on top of that is it's not only cheap, but I think it also defines value. If you miss out on Christian Watson at the 509, Reed's going at the 711, Golden's at the 1003, and Love's at the 1004. So you have the opportunity to still get arguably 2 of the 3 weapons that Love will be targeting. Now, Tucker Kraft I didn't put in there because, again, it's a tight end, but we're talking about wide receivers at this point. You're talking about a quarterback and a receiver in the 10th round. That's great. So, Mike, I think the cheap stacks, it is your turn. And I think I see 2 on here. I'm curious which one you're going to go with, but I like them both.
I'm going to stick with the one that I have the most information about. So I'm going to go with the Bijan, Tua, Drake London, and/or Kyle Pitts stack. I think it's just combining it with Tua in one way or another. It's just because because Tua is free. Tua is a free pick at the end of your draft that no one's going to go for, and you can still grab these guys all throughout the draft in one way or another. I understand he's probably one of the most controversial quarterbacks that is in this group. I am not a big fan of him. I'm actually one of the least bit wanting this guy at all. But if you pair him with a guy like Bijan, if you get the 101, you're going to reap some benefits. I mean, right now, the Dolphins last year were 3rd in passing to the running back. And then most likely that's going to continue with him under center. Browns were 4th in passes to the running back with Stefanski and with Tommy Tees. They're going to be going over to the Falcons as well. So Tua, he's also bottom 8 in ADOT, which is just one of those things where he just loves throwing it short, even though he had a guy that, he could have passed it all the time to, but, Tyreek is not there yet.
DJ Tyreek.
But the only time that we saw Tua at his best is when he had over 500 passing, attempts in his particular situation. I think with a guy like London, who is just on the upswing of his career, Kyle Pitts, who is starting to come into his own as well. If you can combine those guys at their very low prices, right now Drake London is at the 2.9, Kyle Pitts at the 9.1. And Bijan we already know. So if you can get one of those two and pair him with Tua, it's one of those things where you can get. It's basically a free stack if you're able to get those guys.
May I add something really quick on top?
Sure.
I talked at the beginning about what's the ideal build. My ideal build is 3 stacks. My preferred roster construction is 3-6-6-3. 3 quarterbacks, 6 runners, 6 receivers, 3 tight ends. If you get Bijan or Drake London at the first and or second round, I would consider going with 4 quarterback build in this particular build. But I would actually go and I would try to get a Josh Allen, and then I would take Penix and I would take Tua, and I would sacrifice a wide receiver or a running back, or maybe I get a high end tight end and I feel comfortable with 2 tight ends in this build because it is best ball and you don't have to decide to play him. It's not the ideal build. But I think if you're looking at, I don't know which, because Tua has concussion history. He has injuries. Sure. He may not even win. He'll probably win the job. I expect both of these guys to play at some point this season. We don't know when. So I think if that's what you're looking at, I think if you've got the security of I've got a Josh Allen or you've got a really high end, quarterback, if you believe in Lamar, having a big season, and I do think he will, then I think you can afford to stack with both the Falcons quarterbacks. Again, and just because they're so cheap and free, throw them on with round 17 and 18 or round 16 and 17 because it's not costing anything and nobody's targeting them. So that is an interesting way. I think that I've done that in a couple leagues actually, where I have Bijan and where I have Drake London. So throw that out there. It doesn't have to be 3-6-6-3. It could be 4-5, 6-3 at that point.
And I think this offensive line is probably the better one of the ones that he's played with in his career. Dolphins last year, their biggest problem was their offensive line. The Falcons actually have a decent line. They are one of the better. They're probably in the top 15 when it comes to that. So I have a little bit more faith in him being behind a strong line with a good set of skill players around him, guys like Bijan, Drake and Pitts, where he can spread the ball out a little bit. So I really do think this is a good situation for him. I feel a little bit stronger about Tua than I do about Penix. I don't see it. I do think that Tua is going to be their starter until something happens, until there's, as you said, injury, which we're not wishing on. But at the same time, I do think Tua has a promising season if that line can keep him healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big if, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, and Bijan's a good part of that too, because he's going to take a ton of pressure off of him.
For sure. So I want to talk about my cheap stack here. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I have a ton of it because it's almost free.
Yeah, I like it.
I believe the Titans are going to have a consolidation of targets, and they don't have alphas at certain positions. We like Carnell Tate. We like Wandale. There's nobody else in town. There's the mishmash of Io Manor and DK, and fine. It's not going to be great. Grant Helm, not going to be great. Running back by committee, and that assumes Tony Pollard is on this team. As of today, it looks like he will be. A lot could change, but it's a 3-headed committee. So when you look at touchdowns, when you look at where this ball is going to go, Cam Ward is going to hyper-target Carnell Tate, and he's going to hyper-target Wandale. And again, we do a lot of dynasty. I know Wandale's dynasty value took a little bit of a hit or a lot of bit of a hit, depending on how high you are on Tate. But Carnell Tate is going to be the wide receiver 1A or 1B, probably the 1A in this offense. And he's going at the 5-12, guys. He's going at the end of the 5th round. Wandale is going in the 10th and Cam Ward in the 12th. So I can go and get Amon-Ra St. Brown at the back of the 1st round. I can load up on receivers. I can load up on some of my, my Lions stacks that I love, my Cowboy stacks that are my best value stacks early, and I can still come back and get almost a full stack with Tate, Wandale, and Cam Ward in the middle rounds, and then finish, Mike, to what we just talked about. Maybe I take Drake London in the 2nd, and I throw, two Falcons. It's not how I would build, right? Like I would rather go and find I'll be honest, I've got Goff at the 9-12 and Cam Ward in the 12th round. So if I can go get my Lions stacks, my Cowboys stacks, and my Titans stacks, and those are my 3 stacks, I am ecstatic leaving that draft knowing that I'm going to have some, naked players in there that also have super high ceilings. The Kinshawn Judkinses of the world, right? That's where I'm really excited. So for cheap, give me Carnell Tate in the end of the 5th, Wandale at the end of the 10th, and Cam Ward at the end of the 12th as my 3rd of my 3 stacks. And I am excited about the consolidation of targets and touchdowns from Cam Ward to those 2 wide receivers. Evan, we're all positive here. Give us some negative, man. Rain on our parade with some of these. Rain on our parade with some guys you just don't like.
Well, so the Titans would have been a good transition, but I'm going to get to them in a moment here. My number 6 of DraftKings Bestball ADP avoid players is Alec Pierce at the 79.5. I want nothing to do with any of the Colts wide receivers this year. We were just talking about Tyler Warren and building a Daniel Jones, or even if you're crazy, an Anthony Richardson stack with him. Tyler Warren is the future of that Colts offense. I want nothing to do with any of the wide receivers between Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. I think this is going to be an offense that's going to struggle to throw the football a lot more than people believe. And Tyler Warren is going to be getting a lot of the targets, resulting in being double teamed. Occasionally, Pierce will have his high upside weeks in which he goes like, I don't know, 6 for 13 for 115 yards against the Steelers' terrible secondary. Even if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're happy. But then he's going to go 1 for 2 against Kansas City for 26 yards. No, thank you. I want nothing to do with that in best ball. I would much rather grab other guys around him, such as Dallas Goedert at tight end. Even I'd rather have DK Metcalf at this point than Alec Pierce. So after that, it was the transitional period with Tony Pollard at the 83.8. Now that they've got Nicholas Singleton and a supposedly healthy Tyjae Spears to go with him, we're suspecting this could be a 3-back committee. I don't think it's necessarily going to go 3-back committee, but you should have sold high on Tony Pollard in dynasty leagues if you still had him, because Tony Pollard's 1,000-yard seasons are over. I think he's in a final year of his contract with the Titans. He cost $2 million to cut. I don't think he's necessarily going to get cut, but I think Nicholas Singleton is going to get his chance to shine in that offense if he can prove himself, and that's going to take a lot of work away from Tony Pollard. I would much rather have other running backs below him like Jaylen Warren of the Steelers, in addition to I'd even go at other positions. I'd even go Rico Dowdle at 92.9. So those are 2 guys I don't want at their ADP, Alec Pierce and Tony Pollard. You guys have any comments so far?
No, I mean, the only thing that I would say is I'm also off on Alec Pierce because of the concept of we're just hearing now that he is probably not going to be ready until the first week or 2 of the season. They say training camp, but he's not. They got to ramp him up, and he probably won't be himself a little bit until later. I do like Josh Downs a lot. I mean, I know me and Phil are very high on him, and it's really more on the value of where you can get him in this particular offense. I think he's going in like the 9.5 or something like that.
He's going at the 8.10 right now.
8.10.
Okay. I literally have it on my screen.
I was gonna say. I mean, I'm looking right at it. So 8.10, and that's a great value for him, especially even if he's not fully involved in the offense. He's going to be the main guy if Pierce is out for a minute, or at least the second guy, and that's still better than most. So I do like Josh Downs in this group because they really don't have anybody else that really matters. He's the only guy, and he's one of the better route runners of this group that can get open and make it so that that Daniel Jones can hopefully have a better career where he currently is.
Yeah, agreed. I think for me, it is the Colts are an interesting offense this season. I think there's always teams every year that kind of take that unexpected step forward, and then everyone gets real hot and bothered by them, and then they inevitably take that step back. I don't know how healthy Daniel Jones is coming off the Achilles. I don't know how fast he's going to be able to start. I think this is going to be the JT show for probably the first month, and then I do think with Pierce getting ramped up, I think Josh Downs is a phenomenal pick. I think even if you don't want to stack with the Colts, Josh Downs is one of those like wide receiver 5 on your roster that could be played naked that you'd be totally happy with grabbing 100%. A couple of touchdowns and just having a good season for you. Or if you get sniping happens. You just that's the way that the drafting works. You're targeting, whoever it is that you're targeting, Jordan Addison, because you want to get him cheap with Kyler, and then all of a sudden, boom, he goes right in front of you, and you're like, oh, great, I'll just take downs because they're in the exact same range. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with the Colts. I've always had a hard time with Daniel Jones, but we don't have time for the Daniel Jones.
So
Mike, how do you feel about Daniel Jones? That's a whole.
I know
other
everything
show,
about
though.
him.
We can have a whole show.
We got a Giants fan here that could probably.
I think we're gonna finish the show with some sneaky stacks. Evan, is there anyone? Let's get some positive from you though. Is there anyone that's sneaky that you do like? Anyone that you think is, hey, you know what? Not a lot of people are on this particular player or this particular.
Hold on
stack.
1 second though, Phil. I have 3 more players that I'd be avoiding.
Okay.
Do we want to work those in later, or I can do them right now?
Let's do them now.
All
Let's
right.
end the show on a positive.
Eighth on my list is RJ Harvey at the 85.1 on DraftKings ADP. I want nothing to do with the Broncos running game anymore.
Yeah,
even though they did just draft Jonah Coleman this year in the NFL draft, Sean Payton is showing why he hates fantasy football and he'd rather just use guys that are not fantasy friendly in the running back room. So I'm avoiding all Broncos running backs if I can. No, thank you. I would much rather grab I would much rather grab, again, Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle. I'll even go Kyle Monangai over anybody like an RJ Harvey. Chris Godwin, I already went over, so I'm not going to do more. Again, he's my number 9 at the 94.8. And then my last one is, well, I just went over the Broncos running backs, J.K. Dobbins at the 101.3. So I don't know why Broncos running backs are as high as they are necessarily, but I would hope their ADP begins to plummet later this summer too, because this Broncos running back attack looks like a possible 3-back committee that I am so out on. I don't think there's any upside in that backfield.
Agreed. Let's do some of our sneaky stacks. These could also be values. They could also be cheap, but I think sneaky is maybe when we define sneaky as not a lot of people are thinking about it. So Kendall, why don't you kick us off with a sneaky stack?
All right. It's tough with the terminology, right? What's a sneaky stack? How do you differentiate value from I'm buying this because it's just too damn cheap, right?
It sounds like a delicious snack if we call it sneaky stacks.
So here's honestly, you're kind of right there, dude. Which bag of chips is this going to be?
It's like a poor man's Scooby snack.
I'm going to go with a stack that, look, there's a popular take out there, right? Anyone who watches any amount of fantasy content, right? One, if you play a lot of fantasy or watch a lot of fantasy, you probably play a little Dynasty. If you play a little Dynasty, you've seen the roller coaster of Justin Jefferson's up and down, right? We've seen Kyler go up and down, and now we've got the trade, and we've got a lot to talk about.
No,
right?
Kyler doesn't go down. If he goes down, he gets squished. He only goes up.
Yeah, that's fair. Why couldn't we just swap Kyler and Tank Dell, man? The wrong player went down, man. But story for another day. So we're talking about that, right? Everyone likes the discounted Justin Jefferson, and a lot of people are like, well, at a certain point, everyone will draft a Kyler Murray, right? Whether you're in or out, there's a point where you take him. I think the Left 4 Dead free stack is actually cheap Kyler, but you missed out on JJ, and Kyler's just a value because you went with the later QB. Like we're talking about how many players you could take, all the quarterbacks afterwards, right? If you take the philosophy of, if push comes to shove, I'm just going to take the player because there's quarterbacks I can take like Herbert and whatnot later. So if you fall into Kyler, I actually kind of like the Kyler TJ Hawkinson stack for the same reason that Hawkinson's not going to be he's free. He's not the focal point of that offense anymore because he's not a name anyone's thinking about, right? JJ definitely is, right? But Kyler is going to need an easy target, someone that owns just an area that he can see. TJ's still tall. He's still a tight end, right? I think the offense is going to move because I think the coaches are just good enough to make good talent work. So if they're in the red zone enough, I don't trust their running game. I don't think Aaron Jones is the same player he used to be, and Jordan Mason's just not quite it. So if they have a similar Cardinals situation of an just kind of a not good run game, they have to pass the ball a little bit. I think the easy play is going to be to take away Justin Jefferson and make a team win another direction. Well, if I've got a short quarterback that can run bootlegs, Jalen Hurts made that work all day long with several tight ends on the team. I can see that same play being a first down getter all the time to a TJ Hawkinson. And I think TJ Hawkinson can be a guy that stumbles into a ton of 6 catches on 8 targets, nothing crazy, 60, 65 yards, but like I will take that all day. I think he could be a very weird, less talented version of what Fannin just did for the Browns. But you're getting him at such a cheap price where he kind of fits the mold of like what Ferguson could have done back in the day when he was too cheap before we kind of caught on. So it's not a name that I think is going to win any leagues because you probably need another tight end or other players to do that. But he's freeing up a pick you would have taken at tight end. You know, guys, we just did a segment on Warren. If everyone's just as sharp as us in a draft, those guys are going to have to be taken too early to be taken at all. Right. And if you need to go another direction, I just think this opens up one more name in a late QB tight end stack that is maybe just a little underrated.
I agree. I think it's sneaky because, again, people aren't thinking about it or it's gross or you're like, that guy, whatever it is. But that's sometimes where the value does open up. So, Mike, why don't you give us a sneaky stack and then we will get into mine and wrap the show.
Sounds good. So mine is the definition is free. They're sneaky.
Okay.
It's someone that we're not thinking about. It's someone that people kind of it kind of gets out of our head and we're not really thinking, but it's also somewhat free. And that's Jaylen Warren and Aaron Rodgers. And I know it's a weird stack, making it, a running back combo comparatively to, with a wide receiver for the QB. Aaron Rodgers has been historically one of the best dump off guys the last few years. They were number 2, I believe, last year in passes to the running back. And then on top of that, if you combine both running backs last season with Gainwell and Warren, they had 130 targets to the running back, which was only above CMC that had 129 together, which is beyond crazy to me. He had the second most in receptions at 79 on, at that point after with them combined. And then Warren on his own was leading in those receptions. So all I can say is that at this point, I know that it's half point PPR. I know it's not full, but he's still going to ramp up a ton of points with the, passes down to the, to good old Jaylen Warren. I do think they're going to continue to run the ball with McCarthy. And I just think that this, the addition with Michael Pittman also takes a lot of pressure off the wide receiver, takes a lot of guys out of the box because a lot of times they were really just going, hey, you're going to throw it to DK Metcalf, go ahead. Like we got 3 guys back there guarding them. We're good. So I think I think what they've done is kind of open up their run game. They just paid Darrell Washington so that they can, so he can go out there and block every so often. So I really like the combo of them. And you're basically getting Rodgers in the 17th round. You're getting Warren in the 7-7. So I mean, you're grabbing at the end of the 7th for Jaylen Warren and 17th round for Rodgers. So I love the stack.
I like
Phil
it.
is as soon as you get yours done, I have a disgusting stack. I can't wait to share.
I missed it. My headphone just had a beep in there. What'd you say?
As soon as you get your sneaky stack out of the way, I have one too.
Okay, good. I've got a couple. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just literally going to list them off. I talked at the very top about my ideal build, 3-6-6-3. I think there are some names and some players that you are not thinking about that you should be late on to get to your 5th and 6th running backs. The Washington Commanders backfield. I have no idea who the starter is going to be. No one does. It could be Bill. It could be Rashad White. But it's not a great wide receiver room right now. Antonio Williams is a rookie. I don't want to hear a word about Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's not playing football. Stop with the Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is not going to go to the Commanders. He's not even going to play football. So
I agree.
Chig is interesting. Sure, that's fine. But like Chig's not a ceiling guy. He's not giving you much.
Love Chig.
And so, right. But it's you just don't know yet. Right. And so my Washington backfield, they're going next to each other at the 10-12 and the 11-01. Grab them both because you're absorbing all of the rushing touchdowns in that offense for your 5th and 6th running backs. And you can load up on the high-end ceiling guys early on. You can get your quarterback and your wide receiver stacks and still grab, when you have bye weeks, when you have some guys that you need. The Minnesota backfield. I know Kendall or Evan, you just said, not Kendall, I think it was you, Aaron Jones, not what he once was. I don't really want anything to do with Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason in a dynasty league. And I really don't want anything to do with them in redraft. But here, let me give you the reason I'm bringing this up. Grab them both. Because here's some names that are behind them at the running back position. If you need a running back, Tyrone Tracy, maybe. Keaton Mitchell, no. Woody Marks, no. Isaiah Pacheco, only if we won't even say it because you know
Don't even say it. Don't even say it.
We're not even going to say it. I'm interested in Isaiah. I'm interested in Pacheco, but only if I have Gibbs. Right? Not as a standalone value. Okay, you ready? Jonah Coleman, pass.
Yeah.
Tyler Algier, I'm in on that.
Love it.
That we've seen. Okay. Tajay Spears, Zach Charbonnet, who's going to miss the season. B. Robinson in Atlanta, the wrong B. Robinson. Dylan Sampson.
I do like him a lot.
Yeah. So, but you're not getting Mike. Brian Robinson Jr. is not going to get anything left over. I watched him for an entire season as Christian McCaffrey's backup, and he did dog shit. Nothing. Did not participate in the football season last year. Bijan is the guy, and he's better than McCaffrey.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So if you want to take Brian Robinson, I will gladly pass and let you have him. I would take the Washington backfield. I would take the Minnesota backfield together. I would take Jalen Warren or Rico Dowdle together. It's more expensive at the 704 and 803. But if you miss out on running backs, if you load up on running backs early, or you miss out on a guy that you are targeting and you have to pivot to the tight end or wide receiver position, or you are just loaded everywhere else that you can possibly be because you did reach for some of the earlier stacks. I'm interested in those guys because they're so late and they're gonna score touchdowns. And in best ball, when you don't have to decide which one it's going to be, this is the only format that I would take them in, and this is the only way I would do it this way. And that's really the only, these are not sexy players, guys. These are not players that we're going to be drafting in redraft. These are not players that we can they don't have a lot of value for trade in dynasty. But in a best ball format, I am interested in grabbing those guys because it is sneaky. No one's thinking about it, and you don't have to start them. So I'm interested in those guys. The other one I would say just very quickly, if you grab Jalen Hurts to go with Devonta Smith early on, please grab Goddard in the 12th, and please get Stowers in the 16th round to be your tight end too. Go get Brock Bowers and then go get Goddard and Stowers, and there's your 3 tight ends, and you are set, right? Or go get Warren and get your 2 Eagles tight ends if you have Jalen Hurts. All right, Evan. Give us your
All
final
right.
sneaky stat.
I am prepared to end this show on possibly hilarious and one that's going to make you guys vomit. Are you guys ready to hear this? You want to know what it was? Geno Smith and Garrett Wilson, baby. Go get those 2 if you can, whether you're in DraftKings or Underdog, and I'll tell you a good reason why. Give Geno Smith an elite wide receiver, and he's a good quarterback. He didn't have that in Vegas. He had an injured Brock Bowers that didn't work out. Geno Smith can dominate when you give him an elite wide receiver like a Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is currently sitting at 43.4 in DraftKings ADP right now. You can get Garrett Wilson at the back of the 3rd round. That's how cheap he's going. And if you can grab Geno Smith at one of the final rounds as your last quarterback, you've got yourself a stack that could prove to be dominant in a couple of weeks out of the year, maybe even more than a couple of weeks, with Frank Reich as their new offensive coordinator, which is definitely not attractive on paper, but who cares? Go get those 2 if you can as a sneaky stack as hopefully your 3rd quarterback as Geno Smith.
I can't believe I'm about to say this. I just did this an hour before the show.
Nice.
I was at the 111. I took James Cook, and then I took Amarian Hampton to start. I took Garrett Wilson as my wide receiver 1. I took Ladd McConkey as my wide receiver 2. And then I took blah, 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 blah. I don't remember the rest of it. I took Omar Cooper in the 12th, and I took Geno in the last round. So I left that draft with Josh Allen as my quarterback with DJ Moore, Justin Herbert stacked with Amarian Hampton and Ladd, James Cook as a part of that Buffalo Bills stack, loaded up on wide receivers and running backs, and I took Geno and Omar Cooper as my cheap wide receiver 3, and I got sniped on Sadiq as my tight end because, Kendall, I know you hate him, but I was like, this is the only format I would take him in.
Best
I just did. I love it, Evan. I just did it, and it felt terrible, but I was like, it's my QB3, and I have Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. I
love it.
I'm
And
fine.
Garrett
Yeah,
Wilson.
I'm fine.
I've
And
been-
Omar
I've been
Cooper.
close to,
And
like,
Omar
the
Cooper.
highest in the world on Garrett Wilson for a long time. Watching JSN have his JSN season and just thinking to myself, like, I know in my heart Garrett Wilson is a better wide receiver than JSN, and you will never convince me otherwise. I don't care.
2 years. You got
Garrett
2 more
Wilson.
years.
Garrett Wilson is, dude, he's just an unreal wide receiver. He finally got his NFL highlight play, which was the most ridiculous catch of all. That was insane. I am
You've
very
got a
in on
rookie
what
quarterback
Garrett Wilson
next year, and hopefully that rookie pans out, and then Garrett Wilson is back. So Kendall will do some content on Dynasty and when to trade for Garrett Wilson.
There you go.
Yeah, it might be.
All right,
novel.
guys, that is
Right.
going to do it for this episode of the Extra Point. A lot of fun talking best ball with you guys. Appreciate it. I can't believe we all did this, all 4 of us.
Yeah,
on the
I
same
know. I
night,
love
which
it.
was awesome. We will be doing more best ball content. Of course, we will be doing our Dynasty content, and as we get closer to the season, we will certainly be doing our redraft content. Make sure you are connected at the Fantasy Football Network. Jump over, like, and subscribe to our main channel. Of course, the Extra Point is my channel here as a part of the Fantasy Football Network. Jump in with Evan on Monday nights for Monday Night Mocks. Jump in with Mike, Kendall, and Evan on Friday nights for our Scott Fishbowl mock drafts that we currently have going on, as it is Scott Fishbowl season. And then we will, of course, be doing more mock drafts and more Dynasty content throughout the season and the summer.
Monday night mock drafts with Evan.
Monday night mock drafts with Evan. So for all of us here at the Fantasy Football Network, appreciate you tuning in. This has been another episode of The Extra Point. We out.